Saturday, day before game day, the Green Bay Packers are in Los Angeles to take on the former San Diego Chargers. And I only say that now because it sticks it in my head that I don't say San Diego. They are now in Los Angeles, even though nobody in LA gives a damn about the Chargers. So I am here today with my compadre, Paul Bretl of Dairyland Express. Paul, thanks for joining. How are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here. We got somebody a little different. I've been a little I don't know what the right word is, but I've had Packer Report guys only on these last look videos, so I figured I'd bring somebody else in that's a little bit new. So tell me a little bit, just real quick, for those that maybe aren't familiar, tell me about Dairyland Express and all the stuff that you guys are doing over there, and I even contribute a little bit, so I guess it's what we're doing over there. But tell us why they should look through that site.
Yeah, we cover Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, so anything and everything that you need for any of your Wisconsin sports teams. We're always coming out with previews sort of like this as far as articles and things of that nature. So be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Dairyland, letter X, Express.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's fun to follow through things. There's it's a lot of quick, easy reads too. 3 guys the Packers could pursue at the trade deadline. Yep. 3 guys, free agents the Packers should look at. Guys for the Brewers. You guys are looking through some free agency stuff. I'm assuming that Garrett Cole is not going to be in your guys to pursue for the Brewers.
No, unfortunately, I think that's going to be out of the price range.
A little out of the price range, I guess. That guy's going to break a lot of records from a fan or from a number standpoint. So
absolutely.
Interesting offseason coming up with the Brewers, too. So something you guys will definitely want to follow. These guys were obviously Mike Moustakas and Yasmani Grandal both were declining their options yesterday. So they'll be free agents. And Grandal will probably have a
pursuit of the starting pitcher.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I'm interested just to see what the Brewers do this offseason. They've had back-to-back really good years. They're kind of in a window to win now. But
absolutely,
that is not why we're here. We are here to talk about the Packers. And the first thing I want to talk about is something that I don't know if I want to call it controversial, but what I will say is it's something that was polarizing. Maybe that's the right word. And that is Josh Gordon was waived by the New England Patriots. And it came out that the Seahawks submitted a claim for him right in front of Green Bay, which made a lot of people a little upset. Then it came out today that Green Bay did not submit a waiver claim on him. Paul, what were your thoughts on Josh Gordon and his potential addition to the Packers?
When the news broke that he was going to be released off of the IR from New England, I actually wrote an article and it was called "Don't Expect Josh Gordon to End Up in Green Bay," and that's kind of just what my thoughts were on it. You know, the receivers have stepped up more so than at least for me, more so than I thought they would in Devontae's absence. He looks like he could be back tomorrow, but he'll be back in the near future anyways. And then a red flag for me was the Patriots let him go. Perhaps one of the most wide receiver needy teams in the league let him go. So to me, there was some reason behind that. And then I think it was yesterday it surfaced that his work ethic was in question. And so I just didn't see the Packers pursuing Gordon in any sort of avenue and trying to bring him aboard.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I frankly, my opinion on it is Josh Gordon hasn't been good consistently outside of one season. And that was, I think, 2012, 2013. I can't remember. He had one big year. And I don't mean to – I mean, I know the guy's trying to do better and be better as far as his addiction demons and everything like that. But that's something to where I don't think you could trust him. And I wouldn't blame a team for not trusting him. And then you add in the fact that his performance issues. And Bill Belichick doesn't get these wrong very often. That's why he's the best, right?
Yep.
So when Bill Belichick is saying this guy can't play anymore and my starting receivers, I'm so desperate for a receiver, I just sent a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu. I got a hard time thinking that that's the guy that is going to fix, quote-unquote, the Packers' receiving woes. And really, I think it's a fair question at this point of, now granted, I still think eventually that I may end up proven right, but I mean, there's been a lot of questions about whether or not the Packers have a second good receiver. The question now, I think, is I don't think anybody's going to sit back and say that MVS or Kumaro or, well, maybe Kumaro, but Alan Lazard, guys like that. I don't think anybody's going to say that those guys are going to make anybody forget that Emmanuel Sanders was available. But at the same time, maybe the question now is, does it matter? The Packers have scored 30-plus points in all but one game since Davante Adams went down. They found ways to win. and they found ways to score a lot of points. Now, I've often said, and my counter argument to that has always been that smoke and mirrors will only take you so far. And if you're playing some of the best defenses in the NFL, which they will if they get to the playoffs, they're going to play the 49ers, they're going to play the Saints. If they get to the Super Bowl, they'll have to play the Patriots, well, Kansas City's defense isn't any good, but the Patriots is. So that eventually might matter. But for now, I think it's working really well. And bringing a guy like Josh Gordon, who, God bless him, I hope he gets well and fights those demons and all that stuff. But at the same time, I just don't think that was a risk worth taking. And then you add in the fact that he's taking snaps away from somebody that, honestly, I know Gordon's got the name brand, but he may not even be better than those guys. So any final thoughts on that before we move to the Chargers?
Yeah, I agree, and I've come over, more to the side of not needing a receiver, that they necessarily, all caps need a receiver. But against Dallas and Detroit, other than Allen Lazard's fourth quarter, the receivers caught under 50% of Rodgers' passes for, I believe, like 160-ish yards if we take that fourth quarter out of the equation. Had a great day in Oakland. And during this time, Aaron Jones has been Aaron Rodgers' top target. So Matt LaFleur has been able, through doing Matt LaFleur things, been able to find other options. So I think that if they had added a receiver at the trade deadline, I was 100% on board with that, obviously considering costs. But I don't think that they need one to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know that they do either. It remains to be seen. But I think that something that has definitely been beneficial is that each week, outside of really Aaron Jones, it's been a different guy. And that's forced Rodgers to use all of the weapons at his disposal. And we're not hearing the same conversations about trust, which really were cringeworthy, to be honest with you. I understand wanting to trust that the guys are in the right spot, but I think playing without Adams has forced Rodgers to play within Matt LaFleur's system, throwing the ball on time. And he's not just snapping the ball and looking immediately for 17. We're looking for different guys. Now, that being said, getting Adams back, if Rodgers can continue to do the things that he's done in these last 3-4 weeks without him, this offense has potential to be special. They're number 2 in the NFL since week 3 of the season. So that's exciting. I don't think that there's any question that we didn't expect this when the season started, especially with the way the season started, where they kind of look clunky. They do enough to win against the Bears. That was nice. Minnesota, they come out like a bat out of hell, and then they do nothing in the second half. Actually, really, after the first drive of the second quarter, I think they didn't really do a whole hell of a lot. And then you get the Broncos game, which was kind of clunky. And then the Eagles, they light the world on fire, but can't finish in the red zone. And really, ever since then, they've hit their stride and done really well, save for the Lions game. And that Lions game, really, they're a play or two. If Aaron Jones catches a touchdown, if Aaron Jones doesn't fumble, some of those things, they're a couple of plays away from having a really big night against Detroit, too. So I think it's fair to say the offense is good. I don't know if they're great yet, and we'll see if they are down the stretch here. But tomorrow, they're facing off against the Los Angeles Chargers, and a couple potential roster moves are bringing back Ibrahim Campbell from the physically unable to perform list and Jay Sternberger from the injured reserve list. Currently, the Packers have one open roster spot, and if memory serves, I believe they have until early next week to make a decision on whether or not they're bringing back Campbell and Sternberger. So they could leave it be and do nothing and just let those guys sit. I don't think that's what they'll do. Going into a game with one open roster spot just seems pointless, but they've done a lot of weird things in the past before, like going into a game with one active running back, and that pretty much ended Eddie Lacy's career in that regard. But with those guys specifically, Campbell obviously had a nice little showing last year before getting injured, and then Sternberger's a guy they drafted in the third round. And since we're talking offense, let me stick with him. The tight end position, although I will say Jimmy Graham has played relatively well the last 2 weeks. I think if you're expecting New Orleans Jimmy Graham, then your expectations are a little too high. The free agent contract, it's still been a poor one, and I don't think there's any question about that. But really, the tight end position for most of the year has been a bit of a cesspool. Not a whole lot of production. Robert Tonyan's been injured the last couple weeks. He's the most athletic tight end that was on the active roster. Mercedes Lewis does a couple of nice things. He's a nice role player. But they don't have somebody that can stretch the field like that. And that really feels like the one thing that is missing, well, outside of other receivers, but the one thing that is missing to really LaFleurize, if you will, this offense. What are you expecting, if anything, from Jay Sternberger if and when he returns?
I do think that they'll bring him back to the active roster, but my expectations for what he'll do are very, very low, and it's not a knock on him. I think he has the potential to be a very good tight end, but rookie tight ends just typically don't produce a lot in that first season. I mean, look at Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson so far, and I saw this one stat over the last, I think, 16 years. Only 3 rookie tight ends have eclipsed the 600-yard mark in a season. So I think he could have a moment or two, especially in the red zone if Green Bay brings him back. But I've seen a lot of fans getting excited, thinking he's going to be the savior to the tight end room, and I just don't think that's gonna happen at all. It's just outside of quarterback, it might be the next toughest position to make that leap from college to the NFL with.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, when we were getting closer to the draft, we were talking a lot about the kids from Iowa, Hawkinson and Fant. And Fant's really struggled. And Hawkinson he had the one good game, the first game of the season against the Cardinals, and really since then he struggled too. So, and those were guys that were top 20 picks, first round picks.
Yep.
Jay Sternberger was picked in the 3rd round and has played almost no football. If you want to be excited and optimistic about the 2020 tight end room, saying a combination of Sternberger, Tanyan, and maybe a higher draft pick or a veteran, I really honestly think, looking that far ahead, that they might have to pursue a veteran in free agency.
I think so too. You can't go in with a rookie in those two.
Yeah, and considering that Jimmy Graham's likely to be cut, Mercedes Lewis could retire. I suppose they could bring him back, but I think you could find somebody else like him relatively simply. But that remains to be seen, and that's beside the point. I think you're right. I think what LaFleur can do to really help him build some momentum for the 2020 season is just put him in situations where he can be successful relatively easily. Give him a couple of those, the old Mike McCarthy screen pass to the tight ends, or, some tight end screens that LaFleur has run, or just a few, I'm all choked up about it, a few small things that he can do to be successful. And maybe he makes a big play for you, but maybe he doesn't. And that's okay if he doesn't. You were kind of expecting, at least I was, expecting a redshirt season from Sternberger, just because it is that hard to acclimate as a tight end. And a lot of rookies in general aren't very good. A lot of rookie tight ends really aren't very good. And you've seen that play out so far with Hawkinson and Fant, just to name the guys picked in front of him. The other side of the ball is Ibrahim Campbell. And I think this one is interesting because I understand the excitement. He did play really well. But my other thought is this is a fringe roster guy that the Packers picked up on waivers, and he's coming off a major injury. Are the Packers being, or maybe not the Packers, I guess, but are the fans being a little too optimistic in terms of the return of Campbell and what he can bring to the defense?
I'm always going to err on the side that, yes, fans are probably being a little too optimistic, but I'll be the first to admit I am an Ibrahim Campbell fan, and I hope that they do decide to bring him back to the active roster. As he said last year, he had, the 3 games he was in, he was very impactful. He's a physical player, has been that way since his days at Northwestern. Had 18 tackles in those 3 games, played over a third of his snaps from down in the box. He also played out wide as free safety, so he's got that versatility. And Mike Pettin likes to play with those 3 safeties quite often. And I think that he will just bring more of a physicality closer to the line of scrimmage than what Will Redmond is right now. So I'm excited and hopeful that he'll make an impact. It's not going to be, all of a sudden tight ends aren't going to be shut down in the run game for opposing offenses are going to hit a wall and stop. But I'm excited to see him out there.
Yeah, that's something I'm interested to see. Is something I do like about it is if he is able to contribute, is just that he can get Adrian Amos to where they can kind of use him as that Swiss Army knife weapon, which you kind of saw early in the season when Raven Green was playing. And they can let him do that, and they can let Darnell Savage do that, where they really haven't been able to do that as effectively with Will Redmond. Although I will say Shannon Sullivan has played very well. He's somebody that I think has earned some snaps in regards to staying on the field on defense when Campbell comes back. Looking ahead to tomorrow real quick, like I mentioned, this is, one last look at Packers versus Chargers. The Chargers have a point differential of 0. I have joked that they are the Detroit Lions of the AFC. I believe that there are few, if any, quarterbacks that snatch defeat from the jaws of victory quite like Phillip Rivers can. Matthew Stafford is certainly one of those. The Chargers have had a rough year. They were one of the most talented teams in football coming into the season. They've been ravaged by injuries, and they find ways to lose games. The loss that they took 2 weeks ago against Tennessee, they fumbled at the goal line after they had a touchdown. It was taken away on review. 10-second runoff, and then they fumble on the very next play. They've got drama with Melvin Gordon, who looks like he's doing the Jamal Lewis thing when he was playing with Cleveland, where he was just preserving himself for his next team, his next contract, which, man, I don't know where that's going to come from, but that's going to be interesting to watch as the offseason comes along as well. But they do have some talent. They have some weapons. Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Mike Williams all make for very good players. On the defensive side of the ball, they have Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. What are you looking at as, if I tell you this is the Chargers thing that the Packers have to neutralize, what are you looking at the most?
Biggest thing is going to be Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon, probably more so Eckler, but pass catching out of the backfield. The Chargers obviously have Keenan Allen, but I'm confident that, the Packers secondary, with how they're playing and the help at safety that we've gotten this season, that, not necessarily be able to take them out of the game, but they'll be able to slow them down. The Chargers rushing offense, because their offensive line is just so beat up this season. It's one of the worst in the NFL. I actually heard this stat yesterday. They've gone 4 straight games without breaking 40 total rushing yards.
Yeah. I think it was Jason Hirschhorn said that on Locked On Packers with Bukowski.
Mm-hmm. And so I just think that obviously that plays into the Packers' hands, because when Mike Pettin has an offense that's one-dimensional, if the Packers can't shut down the run like most teams have been doing against the Chargers, it's going to make things very difficult for Rivers and the receivers. But I think a mismatch is Austin Eckler, their running back out of the backfield, and him catching passes.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how they combat that, because eventually the Chargers are going to find ways to get Eckler matched up on linebackers instead of Mike Pettin dictating a matchup on a safety or something like that. But I'll be interested to see that. I think the Packers pass rush should be able to make some hay against Phillip Rivers tomorrow with this. He doesn't move very well, and their offensive line is piss poor, like you mentioned. Running, passing doesn't matter. Rivers is known to throw you a couple. So if he does that, I think one key is to make sure that you catch him. People often talked about when you were playing Brett Favre, it was like, oh, Favre will throw you a couple. You just got to catch the ones he throws to you. Rivers kind of the same way. If they can catch the ones he throws to him, I think the Packers can win big. But I think the biggest thing is on offense. Brian Bulaga is going to be playing with an injured finger, and David Bakhtiari obviously is a very good left tackle. Those two neutralize. Joey Bosa is one of the best pass rushers in football. He's given me nightmares for 8 years. I hate the Bosa family almost as much as I hate Ezekiel Elliott. It seems like the Buckeyes find guys that just destroy Michigan, and then they go to the NFL and they probably wreck my favorite NFL team in the same process. But neutralizing those guys, keeping Rodgers upright, whether Devontae Adams is back or not, I don't know how much that's going to matter. But something that is I still feel is being very undersold is how well the Packers offensive line has played this season. And that's a credit to Brian Gutekunst, because obviously he had the decision on Brian Bulaga. He chose to keep him. David Bakhtiari and Corey Linsley were givens, and the guard position took a complete makeover this offseason. He spent a top 50 pick on a guard, took some criticism for that because it wasn't a wide receiver, and Elton Jenkins he won't win Rookie of the Year, but he might be playing the best of all offensive rookies right now. And Billy Turner has been average to slightly above, which when you consider that last year the guards were Justin McCray and Byron Bell, Byron Bell was a turnstile, and Justin McCray was very little, if any, better than that. So I think the offensive line keeping Rodgers upright has been a huge story this season. Obviously, they're coming off of a relatively poor performance, which I thought was some credit certainly due to Steve Spagnuolo, but keeping Rodgers upright will keep the Chargers pass rush can wreck a game, and you can't let these guys wreck a game. I think that's kind of the biggest thing here. Paul, tomorrow, 3:30, we got Tony Romo, we got Jim Nantz, we got Tracy Wolfson. The Packers are in LA for their 9th home game of the season. Thank you, NFL, for doing that. Very appreciative for doing that. What are your thoughts? Who wins and why?
My thoughts, I'm expecting a lot of, at least early on, the running game from the Green Bay Packers. The Chargers, they have Bosa and Ingram on each side of the line, or edge rushing. But up the middle, they've struggled, and they're both starting. Their nose tackle and their starting defensive tackle are both doubtful, so I'm assuming that they're going to be out tomorrow. And the Chargers are giving up 124 rushing yards a game. So I'm expecting a lot of Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams in between the tackles. And I think this is a game that the Packers should win, and they should win comfortably. So I'm going to go 27-17 Packers.
Yeah, the Chargers haven't lost a game by more than one score this season. I
It's a
think this will
tradition,
be,
unlike any other. Phillip Rivers down a score with 3 minutes left on Sunday.
and he probably throws an interception.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. I expect Green Bay to win as well. I think that you mentioned, I mentioned the last week when they played Kansas City that I thought the Packers' biggest advantage was on the ground. I think that's the same case this week. Their biggest advantage is on the ground. Jamal Williams has played really well this season. Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones. The offensive line has done a good job. I think this could be a game where Green Bay really just is in control from start to finish. I think the final score might be one that doesn't really reflect how much dominance Green Bay displays throughout the game, just because, like I mentioned earlier, Rivers can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, but he's also very good at putting up garbage time numbers. He's Kirk Cousins-like in that regard. He's better than Kirk Cousins, but in that regard of garbage time king, he's one of the main contenders of that, along with like Matthew Stafford, and Cam Newton's pretty good at that too, and some other guys like that. But beside the point, I think Green Bay wins 27-20. But I think this could be a game that's like 27-13 with 4 minutes left in the game or something like that, and they get a late garbage touchdown just to finish them off. So we both like Green Bay to win. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can check out the show's Twitter handle. It's at Packer Pulse. You can follow us on YouTube under Pulse of the Pack. Like, subscribe, leave us comments. Tell me that I look stupid in this winter hat while I'm in the house. Whatever it is you need to do, that's fine with me. You can follow Paul Bretl. He's Paul, is there an underscore in your Twitter handle? I don't remember.
Yep, it's Paul_Bretl, Bretl.
That was right. Okay, and then next week we've got a big week. So Paul is going to be out with us. Maggie Loney is going to be out with us from Pack-A-Day. Jason Perrone. We're all going to be in Green Bay at a site to be determined, but be sure to come stop and say hello to all of us next week as the Packers are going to take on the Carolina Panthers. But we both like Green Bay to beat the Chargers. Thank you guys for listening, and of course, go Pack, go.
Pack.